Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast. This is David Waldas here with Nick Musica. And here we are, season 2, episode 1. We've been planning on starting this for about 3 months. We keep meeting and recording and then not recording and then just getting talking. And it's finally here today to get started. So excited to be back with you all. So much new information, so much new stuff to share. Welcome, Nick. Glad that we're back
David.
at it.
It's all happening.
Yeah, I was going to say it's long overdue, but it's all, this is just the timing. I don't think it is overdue. I think that there's been a lot of incubation. There's been a lot of, I woke up this morning to this message of, actually got it throughout the night, being woken up. It's saying that it's time to be outward facing, and that went through a period of cocoon, a period of inward facing, a period of reflection and channeling all this new information. And now it's time to become outward facing again and bring it to the world. And so here we are talking about it. So super excited. What we're going to talk about today is really around our boundaries, our intentions, and how we engage with the world and how we engage with people in general. And there's a whole bunch of new downloads, which we'll get into and we'll talk about. And I have a new book in the works for that I'm super excited about. But let's start today, talking a little bit about what aligned living is, and then really talking about the new boundary stuff that's coming up with it and how we show up in the world. And so when we look at aligned living, really what we're looking at is this idea of there's a world out there, we're in here, we're going to create a sovereignty for ourselves. And when we show up in the world with that sovereignty, we get in touch with who we authentically are. Our inner world gets very quiet. Our intuition seems to jump because we have so much more access to it. And here we are with that clarity and that sovereignty. And we walk into rooms, and instead of feeling the rooms coming at us and responding to that, the room feels us. And we're reversing the feedback loop. We're bringing our energy to everything that we do in this much more sovereign way. And we're very aware of what's going on around us, but everything's driven from our center. And any of us that are empathic know that's most of us. That's been a challenge, and so that's been what aligned living is all about from the beginning, is to get really in touch with who we are and bring that and offer that from our most authentic self. And it's been life changing, right? We've been working on this for 10 years. I think the original download was in 2016 and summertime of 2016. So it literally has been 10 years. So the new stuff is a lot more about how we are now organizing that inner space. Because, initially it was there's our outer space and or there is the outer space, there's what's not us, and then there is us. And of course, the world is us as well, but driving it from this inner space. And so what do we do with that inner space? How do we organize it? How do we work with ourselves in our physical bodies to really embody that much more of our soul blueprint, to embody that much more of who we truly are? Really, I see it as our soul self, our higher self, to hold that in our body. And part of what happens then is we walk out into the world and we feel much more clear about who we are. And then we engage with the world, and it has an effect on people, and a profound effect at that, right? When any of us that have already been working with aligned living for a while, we know what it's like when the world feels us, because we create a field around us, a stabilized field, and a very high vibrational, high dimensional, or fifth dimensional stabilized field. And that creates a response. And so, it's so interesting when we start to experience that, because when we're with people for a short amount of time, for most people, it's very uplifting, right? It brings them into their higher aspects of self. And it brings, they start to entrain with our energy field, and they feel much more aligned. And once we do that, there's a very clear reflection that people feel. Like there's an amplification of their own energy and a clarity of who they are and how they're showing up. And that's great for healing. That's great in sessions. That's great, when we are walking through the world with it in small doses. But what happens with our experiences when people are in our field for a long time is often quite different. What happens when we're, working with whether it's business partners or friends or family or, intimate partners, something different happens because we end up spending prolonged periods of time in our fields. And so, welcome, Nick. How are you doing? This was a long intro into our into our welcome back.
It was perfect. Yeah. I'm looking forward to season 2. Here we are. It's happening right on time, as you said. And I enjoyed the recap of what Align Living is through the lens of the new downloads.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I've heard that, even though we've been talking. I've heard that.
It is fun how it keeps evolving. The language and the message is the same underneath it all, but how it's showing up to be described is a little different. And so, it's interesting. I just got back from Mount Shasta. I went up for Lion's Gate that August 8th, 8/8, which is such a, incredibly powerful window for manifesting. And Mount Shasta is such an incredible place for manifesting. And so when you tie the two together, it was an awesome experience. And there was a theme that was really interesting and surprising to me. And maybe it shouldn't have been surprising, but what happens in Shasta, it's a lot like the energy that we're talking about. Everything gets amplified, right? And so you go to Shasta and you feel a whole bunch more of everything. You become a whole bunch more of what you are. I mean, people talk about like what happens when, people get a whole bunch of money or a bunch of powers, they become more of who they are. And Shasta tends to do that. And so people, their darkness rises and their light rises. And person after person, not only was it from talking to people, but observing people's behaviors. I was watching arguments or disagreements, and there was a theme running through of you're against me, a theme of like, this person's out to get me, or this is out to get me, or it was kind of borderline paranoia. And I, it's when we're looking at the world today and all this stuff is coming out more and more obviously that there's a whole bunch of agendas that are not supporting, who they're supposed to be supporting. I think we can look at 10 different places in our lives and see where that's true. There's a theme going on that there's some sort of opposition that most people are feeling in their lives, whether it's people they're close to, whether it's, whatever they're trying to create. And watching that get amplified in Shasta with a lot of people that are there with, great intentions, but still that energy was coming up for them. And I was like, wow, this is so tied in with the downloads of what's happening now with Aligned Living. And so really it was cleaning up these 5 intentions of our boundaries, we can call it, that are part of the core Aligned Living curriculum now. And the first one is, and we start out by looking at them as our intentions. And then when we say, well, these are my intentions, they also have to be the intentions of whoever I'm going to engage closely with. And so the first intention is showing up with positive intentions. And you may say it's similar to do no harm, but I think it goes beyond that. Like I want things to go well for me, and I want things to go well for you. I want things to go well for all of us. And we live in a world where people are scared, and if people are looking at that perspective of things are against me, it's hard for them to come in with like, well, if you're against me, I don't want things to go well for you. And I think that it's an unconscious thing that is, feeling, belief, energetic that's running through a lot of people right now. And so when we're engaging, really setting the intention for ourselves, I'm showing up with positive intentions for all of us. Positive intentions for me and what I want, but also positive intentions for you and what you want. And I have a boundary, a clarity, which becomes an energetic boundary, which becomes part of our energetic work that says, and whoever I'm going to engage with closely also has to carry that. And that's part of my filter system, is that if you're showing up and you don't have positive intentions towards me, we're just not going to play together. And you don't have positive intentions towards what we're creating, we're just not going to play together. The second one is willing, and this word is important, willing. I'm willing to look at myself to look at my actions, to self-reflect, to take accountability, and make changes as needed. And that's level 2, I would say. And the reason the word willing is important is because of when we look at the level 3, and really, whenever I'm engaging with anybody now, if it's going to be at a closer level, at least these first 3 levels have to be engaged. Otherwise, it's just a no-go for me. Otherwise, it's just this is how I bring order to my house, and I'll let you bring order to your house how you want to, but I'm not going to engage with, with any kind of collective creation intentionally, if they're not at least engaging with level 3. And so level 3 goes beyond the willingness, and it becomes the desire to see ourselves clearly, right? Because a lot of us, when we're confronted with ourselves, we're willing to look at ourselves. We're willing to go, okay, yeah, well, I can see how I showed up here, and I can see how this trauma is coming up for me, and I need to engage with it. But is there a desire to see that? Is there a desire for that clarity? And when we have that desire, it makes the experiences very different, because, as I was saying, when we're in somebody's energy field who's activated, or we can even just say like being in the energy of Mount Shasta, that we're going to see a lot of ourselves. And do we want that? Are we willing to, or do we really desire that? And that makes a difference between it like showing up at work versus like, oh, this is great. I'm getting more and more clarity about who I am, how to clean it up, and what to do about it. And those first 3 levels, if all 3 of them aren't there, eventually you're going to end up being, the problem, because you're going to keep revealing when your energy is at stabilized. And when you're doing the work that we do with aligned living, if you're engaging with people closely that don't desire that clarity, it's going to create conflict, because we're revealing things that people don't necessarily, it doesn't always feel good to see ourselves that deeply. And yeah, so those are the first 3 levels, and we'll talk in a minute about what happens when we move to level 4 and 5, because level 3 can also be a trap. And so, Nick, anything on that? I know that this is a little bit of my monologue today, and as we're getting into this, and I can just keep going. But
I want to hear more about the trap. You got me with trap. So what does that look like?
Yeah, right. And so level 3 is an interesting one, right? Because it says, I desire clarity, I desire feedback, I desire to know who I am. And so say that we're engaging with somebody who our clarity, our energy, the field that we're creating brings up stuff for them, right? And so obviously we've all experienced projection, or, it's often referred to as Darvo now. If you don't know that term, it's kind of become super popular in psychology and whenever we're talking about this type of things. So Darvo stands for D is deny, A is accuse the other person. So we're denying what we're doing. We're accusing the other person, and then the reversing the victim and the offender. And so, it's a more targeted version of projection. And so if we're really in that level 3 place that says, I just really keep wanting all this feedback because I really want to be responsible for myself. I want to take on anything I need to take on. Great intentions. But if we're stuck in level 3, we start to really run everybody else's energetics through us when they're accusing us of something, or projecting something, or presenting us with something. And it's important that we self-reflect, but that trap is a really fine line, because if we're doing all this work, which the aligned living work is, to go, okay, I feel my sovereignty, I feel my clarity, I'm showing up, and then somebody around us says, you're like this, or you're doing this, and you're causing this, and we run it through ourselves every time, we're actually now taking the world that we've said, okay, this is everybody else's energetics, these are my energetics. We're taking them and kind of attacking ourselves with this. And so we have this boundary, and those words come at us as an intention to attack, but they can't attack us because we have that sovereignty. And so we take those words and we attack ourselves with them if we're so stuck in that level 3 that says, I really need to look at myself so clearly and see every little bit of who I am and what I need to clean up. And I really desire that. And so this is where level 4 comes in, because this changes things. Is we go, my intentions completely are to see with clarity how I'm showing up and to be in full accountability. I want that. And show up with good intentions towards everybody. And so my accountability now is this clean, clear space inside myself where I have this clear channel and clear reflection of, am I in my authenticity or am I off at some level? And if we're asking at this higher level for that clarity, then it changes things about asking from the people that may be triggered around us. And a couple caveats about this. One is, if people aren't already operating in levels 1, 2, and 3, and they try to jump to level 4, that says, I know who I am, I know what my intentions are, I'm very clear, and I can feel when I'm off, and my intentions are to be in full responsibility. If they're not in working in 1 through and 3, and they just go, I know who I am, and that's not it. I know me, and I'm not going to accept that. It's another form of protection, and usually Darvo, like blaming the situation or the person. And so level 4 is a really interesting one, because we have to, again, be completely honest with ourselves about, am I in full responsibility for myself? And if I'm not, then I can't move to level 4. I need to spend more time working on levels 1 through 3, because it's another way of just deflecting responsibility for self. And it sounds evolved when people go, oh, I know who I am, and that's just not me. But I was watching this interview with Jordan Peterson the other day, and whether you agree with his perspective or not, he's just a brilliant man. And he was talking about this innate sense we have of doing right and doing wrong. And he said for 10 years, he asked his students every year every semester when he was teaching a class for his psych classes, do you have a sense somewhere in your body, somewhere in your knowing, when you're doing something that's not right? When you're doing something that's against somebody else? Or is there a part of you that knows that? And every time everybody said, yes, there's a part of me. And then he asked, the follow-up question was, do you always follow it? And almost everybody said no, right? And so this is what level 4 is saying, like, can I go into this place where I'm creating this clarity and become aware of that part of me that knows, am I authentic or am I full of it? And hold myself to that. And when we have that level of personal responsibility, the feedback we're getting, what is being thrown at us, it becomes separate, and we can attack ourselves with it, but it's not attacking us. And when we're living in a world that's so polarized right now, so much paranoia, it's such an important trait. And it was really reminded of that when I was up in Shasta, seeing everything amplified for so many people, and just, watching some, 70-year-old guy, screaming at the 16-year-old little young girl clerk at the grocery store about how the manager was like making change his account, and so how he couldn't get his credit because the manager was out to get him. Just getting this girl in tears, and just that polarized battle of good and evil. Things are against me, and when we can feel that clarity inside of ourselves, there is a collective feeling of that. And when we break free from it, there's so much freedom in that. And so then the level 5 on that is, I'm not really in this place of, I'm micromanaging myself. Am I clear? It's just so innate in us that we're always feeling that internal fluctuation of our own authenticity. And we're not asking the world anymore who we are. We're feeling who we are. And we're just so dialed into it that we don't have to keep going, okay, do I have good intentions? Okay, am I open to seeing myself and being responsible and taking accountability and making changes, and do I want that? And now do I feel into who whether or not that truth is? It's all just one package. It's just happening seamlessly. And once we hit level 5, it's just like, oh, there's so much freedom. I don't need to entertain the bullshit anymore. I don't need to entertain the nonsense. And it happens a lot less because we don't have bait in the water. And when we're learning how to do that, there's a part of us that's kind of trolling all the time with bait in the water, so that we can learn that lesson of, is this mine or is this somebody else's? And so that's the breakdown of those 5 levels of boundary system, internal and external. And when I've been taking people through them, what I've found is that people, if they are not embodying these levels themselves, they don't believe other people will. And the moment people embody these levels, they're sure that other people will, or that they can find other people that will. Not everybody, but it's a really an interesting aspect of this is that if I'm not showing up with good intentions, I don't think anybody else is either. If I'm not willing to take accountability for myself, I don't think anybody else is either. If I don't want that, I don't think anybody else wants it either. And so if you're listening to this and you're going, yeah, that's just not how humans are, that's not how people are, it starts with cleaning ourselves up first, committing to those internal boundaries, and then it gets to show up in our world where we get to really feel, is this somebody that I want to build something with and engage at this close level because they're also committed to these boundaries, at least through level 3. And there we
Great.
are.
So I have a question. I have a question about
Yes.
level 4. I think I'm there. Here's the situation. I think I'm there. I'm not sure if I'm there. How do I know? What are the tells? Help me understand what that looks like so I can understand, am I there, or should I go back and pay attention more to and spend more time in 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, well, here's the great thing about this world that we live in is it's such a great feedback device. It's so good. And chances are when we think we're in level 4, we're gonna be like, oh I'm full responsibility for myself. Like I can really like something will happen if we're not, and it will be very clearly revealed to us. We'll walk around with egg on our face, we'll embarrass ourselves, we'll be revealed. And it's so important that it happens. Like, how awesome is that there's a built-in device that we get revealed? And we have to be willing to, because there's a lot of people that will double down and triple down and quadruple down on that's just not true. Everywhere I go, everybody's saying this about me, and it's not true. And if we're in level 3, maybe that does happen. And, we have the same Darvo happening from a lot of different areas. But when we're in level 4 and that's happening, we have to look at it a little bit deeper. And we will see themes that people accuse us of that are Darvo, but we also will recognize, and again, it starts, we have to spend a good amount of time in level 3 of really in that deep self-reflection. And all these levels include the levels below them, right? So when I say level 3, it also includes the level 1 and the level 2. And then level 4 is just like, well, it's all baked in. And so it gets revealed to us. And there may be a little bit of a delay, but inevitably, if we're not really wanting to see ourselves, if we're not listening to Jiminy Cricket, right, the inner voice, and really the piece too, that in order for that to work, we have to hold our alignment, because when we're in the aligned living state, right, when we're in that higher state of consciousness, we feel it very clearly. And we also, when we surround ourselves by people who hold those boundaries as well, like the moment we're in bullshit around them and try to say something that's not true or present ourselves in a way that's not true, it's so profoundly felt. And I think that's part of what happens when we hold this energy ourselves and people try to tell us stories that they've been telling themselves that aren't true. They feel it profoundly. And that's quite often what brings stuff up for people. And so, the good news is there is a built-in feedback device. And if we're trying to trick ourselves, it may work for a short time, but it will not work for a long time. And then again, do I want that information? If I don't want that information, I have no business playing around in level 4 until I've gotten really clear that I want the clarity about who I am and how I'm showing up. And level 4 is extremely destructive if we're not already working through level 3.
So this is a model of adult development, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I mean, children too, right? Like, I mean, it's funny, children quite often start out with a lot more authenticity until they enter the world and start to get the feedback of, oh, I'm not getting accepted for this, or I'm getting judged for this, or I get jealous by somebody, and all of a sudden they start to get indoctrinated into the adult world. And so, like a lot of this stuff, maybe it's all a return to our innocence. It's a return to our purity. And I think we can learn a lot from kids.
So do you think that's at the core of all this?
A return to purity?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because we get trained out of being ourselves. You know, it's funny when you think about, homeschooled kids are often very easy to identify. They just move a little different. They're, we may call it awkward, but it's very individualized. It's very much them because they haven't been indoctrinated into how to move through the world. And it's funny going places like, like being up in Mount Shasta where there's just so many people that are just so individual. They all move a little different than each other. There, granted, there's some groups up there that are kind of indoctrinated into the same way of being, but when we're that sovereign, we just move through the world a little different than the person next to us. And when we're indoctrinated, it's when we're entrained with that adult way of being, uh, something happens, and we lose our clarity of self. Yeah, it's fascinating. And so, yeah, do you have another follow up?
Yeah. So how do you get started?
Yeah. So, you know, what we're talking about is what aligned living builds into, right? And so, on the website, now it's under davidwaldas.com, just under my name. There's a breakdown, and so I work with people one to one, and I work with a handful of generally high achieving people that are doing big things out in the world, which are just so fun to watch that expansion and to watch them take it and pass it on and to all the people in their lives. And then I work with small groups as well. And really what I've changed it to is groups of three. And if people bring their own group of three to me, they get a discount, which is kind of a fun thing to do to work with, especially if you have your group of people that you want to all be working at a level 4 together or level 5 together. It's pretty awesome to work with couples or to work with friends or you know people that are doing business together, whatever. It's really a great way to do it. And so I do small groups of three, and then we train coaches, and then there's also coaches like you, for instance. Nick is also an aligned living coach, and so Nick's available to do this work. But we start out with a 12-week program that takes people through, all of the sequence of everything, and then if people want to just dip their toe in, I do a single one-off session with people to that they can do to see what this works like before they commit to a 12-week program. And then we also have a weekly group that's like an hour, and that's more of a collective group where I'll channel a little bit of information at the beginning, and then we'll do a meditation together and some sort of exercise, and maybe some people will get to share out. But that's more bigger group format, and an opportunity though to a lot of people like that once they've worked with me to keep the work going, or work with one of the coaches like Nick to keep the work going. But it's also if people want to just kind of dip their toe in and see what it's about. It's a nice low cost way to get involved. And so yeah, and also my book Insight, Influence, and Flow, which is my first book that I did with Waterside, is available as well, and that really looks at a lot of the science behind this, and it walks you into the aligned living system, the original system, and gives you all the foundational stuff. And so that book's a great way to really understand what all this is. And it's really fun to look at through a lens of science because a lot of this stuff can seem very woo woo, but it's super concrete and super practical. It's super repeatable, and there's science behind it, and so it makes it super fun.
So multiple entry points to support discovery and exploration. A little bit of choose your own adventure based on your comfort level and where you want to go.
Yeah, all the way from, dipping your toe in to becoming a coach yourself. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
great stuff. And it is fun
That's
to watch people go on that journey. Uh, I know, Nick, you started by dipping your toe in and became a coach, and,
I had no idea I was dipping my toe in when I was dipping my toe in, and then all of a sudden,
got sucked into the river, right?
yeah,
Those are
there's
slippery banks.
so much water around me. Yeah,
Yeah, it
it's been
rose up
great.
to grab you, right?
Yeah. So what did you say? You got the download 10 years ago?
It was
2016,
10
is that
years
what you said?
ago in July, yeah, so we're actually past the 10-year point now, which is awesome.
And I
And,
think
it's funny.
2017 is when you and I met. Yeah, so this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it's been
yeah.
it's been cool to see the evolution of aligned living over the past
Yeah,
10ish years. Yeah.
absolutely. And when I first got the download to take people into this consciousness, the consciousness was not a stable place. It was this fifth dimensional energy that we were working on stabilizing. And now the fifth dimension's so stabilized here that when we make the transition, it feels like people are just like, oh yeah, like it's solid. We're just standing in this place now. And initially it didn't feel that way. It felt very etheric. It felt very much like we were building something. And I think the collective on the planet was building it. And here it is. And so now the experience of people going through the initial work that's all in the book and all in the, in the beginning of the programs, it just feels like a transition of consciousness as opposed to going to a whole new place that's learning to stabilize. It's already stabilized. It's all here, which is super exciting. And we're seeing on the planet. And it's kind of been, it's been super fun to be part of the original stabilizing of that consciousness here, all the way up to now. Like, well, now let's just live there. Let's just be there because it's so concrete and so available.
That's cool. So that environmental support aspect that you were just describing, how does that show up in the first book, and how does that show up in the second book? Because it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first book is all about the foundational parts of it, right? Like, how do we organize our energy so that we're feeling us very clearly, and maybe 90% of what we're feeling is us, and then 10% is the world around us. And I think a lot of us, particularly those empathic people, feel 90% of what we're feeling is the world around us, and 10% is us. And we're always inundated in the energy and the emotions, and everybody's stuff is always running through us, and we're always congested and compromised on our own clarity. And when we reorganize our energy, everything becomes about our own clarity, who we are, what we're bringing to the world, what our personal mission is, about our access to our intuition and stabilizing our being. And that's what the first book's about. And the second book that will be coming out is about organizing that energy inside of ourselves, working with our masculine and feminine, really being a whole internal person. And of course, really the whole divine family, working with our child as well, and becoming this master container that shows up in the world with this solidness, and it automatically regulates our nervous system. Automatically, like there's just so many new parts to it. But the first stage was about how to create the space inside of ourselves and how to create the stability. And the second book is what do we do with it? And how do we make it, really home for us and stabilized, and working with our nervous system, working really with our relationship with ourself, which therefore is our relationship with everybody else. And so those five stages of boundaries are all part of that second book. Yeah,
Great.
beautiful. Yeah, well, what a great kickoff to season 2. I guess the podcast is another way to learn about us too. So the Aligned Living System podcast is what you're listening to right now, and it's so fun to have it back online, starting here now mid-August. Here we go again. So excited to be bringing this to you all, and hope this was helpful and powerful, and really helped you get clear on how you want to show up and your commitment to at least starting with those first 3 levels. And we don't mess around with level 4 or 5 until those first 3 levels are really solid in us. Otherwise, they're actually counterproductive. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you all next week.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.